My dad was a farmer. I didn't want to do that.
Sure.
And when I left school, well, before I left school, I had the chance of either being a gunsmith, a projectionist, the Odeon cinema, or a barber. And I fancied being a barber.
Okay.
But before I left school, I used to, 1959, I used to go into the shop after school, and I'd work with Frank, my boss, and Brian, and they would show me all the different aspects of barbering. And when I left school in 1960, I went to work full-time at the shop. The first things my boss taught me was how to look after my tools, how to sharpen the razors, how to sharpen the scissors. And then I would stand glued to his side virtually while he was cutting hair and shaving, etc. And then the next step, he had me lathering up the old boys that came in the shop for shaves with beards like barbed wire. Nearly took the fingerprints off my fingers while I was lathering up, because you have to massage it all in, and the hot towels and everything else. And then Frank would come in and shave, then I would finish them all off, and then if they had a haircut, I'd then put the gown around them again, get them ready for Frank to come in, and then he would start to cut the hair. And in the old days, we used to use hand shears as well. We had a pair of electric clippers. They were called Horsemen. They were made of, the case was made of Bakelite, believe it or not. That's what it was called then. It's not plastic or polyurethane. They were called Bakelite. And if you dropped them, that was it. The case would just shatter. So if you ever dropped a pair of clippers, you was in trouble.
Okay.
But it was really, really interesting. And with the hand shears, it was tough. It was hard work, especially as a youngster, because I hadn't got the strength in my hands like my old boss had, and it was literally this all the time, and you had to keep it going, because if you stopped, that was it. You'd pull the hair, and the customer would jump forward and go, "Ooh," you know. So you must keep your hand moving at all times with the clippers to get it working. And anyway, then we progressed to electric clippers more so, and it was just so easy after that. Just everything became easy. And the old-fashioned fade, which got me really back into barbering again, which my interest is, was all the old-fashioned haircuts are back in fashion now, which is fantastic. And I love it just as much now as I did then.
Okay.
And the only one I haven't done since I've been back in my shop is the old-fashioned teddy boy jelly roll, which I'm looking for a customer to do on sometime. And when I do, I'm going to photograph it and put it on Instagram, because you don't get many of them these days. It wasn't anything those days as such. No, you had to. My mum and dad had to pay a deposit to the shop for him to train me, and if I'd have left, I'd have lost the deposit. I forget how much it was those days, but it was a reasonable amount of money, I think, because in 1959-60. 100 quid was a lot of money.
Right.
But I don't know exactly how much it was. But I stuck at it, and I learnt the trade, and within 6 months I was actually cutting hair. I took to it like a duck to water, and then within 12 months I'd got customers waiting for me all the time, which used to upset Frank a little bit, because he was the master and I was the boy as such. But I just loved it, and I enjoyed it so much, and we just went from there. And then I think I was with him for 4 years, nearly 5 years. Learned the trade exceptionally well, and then decided to move on, with his blessing actually, because he said to me, he said, if you ever leave a job, he says, make sure you leave the door open so you can always go back if you want to, which I did. Which I never went back to him, because I just went on and on from there. And I think I opened my first shop in 1969 in just outside Oadby in Leicestershire.
Okay.
A one-man chair, just me working away. But it was good fun those days. No, there was about 5 different sets with all different settings. Okay. Very similar to the old-fashioned Thrive the Forfex clippers. where you interchange the head and they had the different grades on the head itself. You didn't have attachments like you got today. You know, it was all the heads had to be changed. And then with the Hortsman clipper came out, they actually had a variable blade on which you could move backwards and forwards. Little bit crude in the old days, and this Oster, they all came into fashion because they were big in America, came into England, and it just went on from there. And my hairdryer, my first old hairdryer we used, I'll never forget it, it was made of Bakelite, and it was like a big round cylinder thing with a fan in, with a nozzle on. It was quite heavy as well, being Bakelite, and I used to use that for drying the hair, etc., when it's been shampooed. But you could alter the tension actually of the clipper with like a wing nut on the top. You could tighten it down a little bit, but you couldn't tighten it too much, because if you did, it was even more difficult to use. But it was good. I mean, I've not used them. I've got them somewhere locked away in a box, but I've not used them for years. I'll probably have to dig them out and give it a whirl if I can find a customer brave enough to sit in the chair. Probably frighten the life out of them if they saw it. But you'd start at the bottom, because it was short back in size those days. Yeah. Okay, occasionally you'd have the block cut or the Boston cut, as it was called them days. You'd do scissor over comb completely, all scissor over comb, and then you'd probably just take the hair out the bottom of the neck, and then you'd line it across with the clipper with the 000, I think it was, or the 4 rows, and then you'd finish it off with the cutthroat razor around the ears and in the neckline. But with short back and sides, you start at the bottom and you literally keep going as quick as you could, but didn't move it up very quick, because if you moved it up too quick and your hand wasn't quick enough to cut, it would pull and it would hurt. You know, my old boss used to say, if you get a kid in the chair and he don't behave himself, just ease up a little bit. He said that would make him, which was a bit naughty, but it was just something that happened those days. But as I said, we used to use the hand shears originally because he said it's the way he learnt, and that's the way he taught me. You'd have to be very, very steady with it, because on damp hair they wouldn't cut quite as well.
Okay, would the speed, would you have to drop the speed or increase the speed?
No, you'd increase the speed, but decrease the movement.
Okay.
So you'd work it quick, but not push it up quite so quick. So you managed to get all the hair. You'd get the odd bit that slipped through the blade, and you didn't. But you'd do that with scissor over comb and finish it all off. By the time you finished with the razor, etc., it used to look fine.
And the tension, would that be much more tension with?
A little bit more tension, yeah.
Okay. Just
so the blades were tighter together, so you didn't miss anything. It's very, very much the same, but slower. You know, you couldn't go through it like you can with a pair of electric clippers.
Okay.
You literally had to gauge the speed of your hand and your movement up the head. You had to gauge that properly, otherwise it became pretty uncomfortable for the customer.
Okay. And tell me how it felt to actually move on to electrical clippers.
Oh well, that was just another world altogether. Speed, you would do haircuts a lot quicker, and because at one stage when I opened this shop 32 years ago, you know, I started in this shop on my own, and people used to think it was the dole office because they'd be queuing outside, and I'd be working in here, and I had a friend, that was my mate's wife. She'd come in 2 or 3 times during the day and she'd sweep up for me because I was just working non-stop, which we experienced the other day, my son and I, because one of the staff let us down, and there was just Jamie and myself in the shop, and I worked 8.5 hours non-stop. All I did was walk from the chair to the till, took the money and back to the chair. No lunch, just worked straight through. And at the ripe old age of 70, at the end of the day, it felt a little bit sore on the back, but we managed to get through it okay. Well, the youngsters today have got it so easy. You know, everything comes easy to kids today, really, compared to what it was those days. Work was pretty tough. Plenty of jobs. There was never a shortage of jobs, and you could literally leave one job and go out and get into another job. But don't know, with kids, it was a different way of life then. It was, I mean, the 60s was a total revolution with styles, clothes, hair, everything. It'll never ever come again the same, because music kicked in the late 50s and 60s, and everything changed with the pop stars, you know, like Buddy Holly, and that's where the hairstyles came from the pop stars. Tony Curtis, the film actor. I mean, there was a haircut called the Tony Curtis, and then there was the Nero cut, which is like the old French crop, and various different styles. But it's good, because it's quite funny, because being at my age now, working in my shop, I get the youngsters come in and they say, oh, I want a 0 fade into a 1, and they look at me and they say like, oh, can you do that? I said, I was probably doing that before your mum and dad was born. Not really, you could do everything those days, but you just take more time. And because the cutthroat razor, I mean, with the shave, the fades, the bald fades, etc. You use they lather it up virtually the same as you do with a shave, and you use the cutthroat razor. Blending in was a little bit more difficult, but my boss used to say, if you don't put a line in, you don't have to take it out. Okay. And that's the way we worked those days. But the methods they use today, they go up with a line, and they put a line all the way around. Then they go up to the next and put a line up all the way around, and then they take it all out. Personally, I don't do that. It's just something I don't do. I literally find the length I want to go to, and then I'll work down from that and finish with the razor in the neck to do the bald fade. It's just something that the younger generation have invented themselves. They've probably watched it on YouTube with some of the American guys doing it, especially the Afro type hair, you know. But I mean, I did Afro hair. I did American GIs. They used to come to me for the flat tops and the high tops and all the rest of it, and we used to shave in the hairline around the front and the parting, etc. We did it all, but we did it with cutthroat razor.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did it all with scissors. We do what we call a mat cut. You'd fluff it all up and literally cut it like a privet hedge, and you'd have it finished perfect. Today they use the clippers straight over the top, but we used to do it with scissors. And I still do flat tops with scissors and comb. I don't use clippers. Not really. My son is my biggest inspiration, quite honest with you. To watch him cut now is fantastic. He's brilliant at what he does. And he learned most of it from me and added to it as he went on, which is fantastic. It's like the pupil and the master.
Okay.
And now I can watch him sometimes to think, oh, that's a good idea. But you never stop learning this trade. If you think you know it all, you might as well pack up, because nobody knows it all. You can always learn. Okay. And the youngsters today are very good at what they do. And you can pick up ideas from youngsters. It's great to watch them. And it's really good to see this industry coming into fruition now. And it's better now than probably ever was. It's a brilliant trade to be in.
Because?
Inspiration from the youngsters coming through and watching them work and cut hair. The money's better. I think when I started, I think I got 2 and 6 a week. 2 shillings and 6pence. And I was 12-hour days, 6 days a week. We had Sundays off. First thing I ever did was learn how to set a razor. We used to call it setting a razor. And you'd use a whetstone. You'd use a coarser one to take off the rougher edges first, then you'd finish on a very, very fine, and then you'd finish on the leather strop. I think I've got one here, hanging up here. Here we go, look. Oh, this thing is so old it couldn't be used anymore because it's all dried out. That used to be quite a supple, but it's about at its day now.
Okay.
I don't think you'd ever get it back to what it should be, because that leather should be fairly soft.
Okay.
So the razor actually picks up the polishing as such.
So with the honning, was that done in the shop, or that's something you do at home and you just finish with the...
In the shop.
All right.
In the shop, yeah.
Before a shave?
No, all the razors would be set and lined up, all lined up, and then we'd start from that one razor and then work along. And when we'd done 2 or 3 different shaves, that razor would be put to one side and it'd have to be reset. I remember Wilkinson's sword edge, because our barbershop, we had a front bit and then the sliding door through to the barber section, and we sold snuff, cigarettes. And then I remember the rep coming in once and he was talking about the Wilkinson sword edge blade, and that was quite a revolution because it was a fantastic wet shave for a safety razor. I mean, the Rolls razor was out originally, where you had a blade for every day of the week, and you'd put that on it would go in like a machine, and you'd push it up and down to sharpen it. But you had a Monday to Sunday blade, and that was called the Rolls razor. And then when Wilkinson came out, that was it. It was brilliant. They had the Ever Ready, the old Ever Ready for a single blade that went in to the razor. And Gillette, of course. Gillette was in the, but there was just so many of them. Because health and safety say you can't use an open blade razor on a customer. You'd have to have one for every different customer. But I find it ridiculous, because you can put it into a solution these days and it's sanitised within 30 seconds. So I don't know why the government have seen fit to say that you can't use an open razor. If it's used properly and kept clean, there's no reason, you shouldn't be able to use one. Because the balance, the weight, everything is just so good, and you can see your blade, which is a big thing. You can actually see your blade. Well, my son started using them first, and I tried them, and they were just more powerful. They seemed to be slower motor-wise, but much more powerful. And they were better quality, much better quality. Probably because they're made in America, not in China. I know there wasn't any limitations, it just makes life easier. And they're nicer to use. They are a good clipper, without a doubt. But then again, anything that comes from Japan is very, very good. Anything the new Keisho razor that's out now, which is very, very good. And the Keisho scissors, I remember buying my first pair of Keisho scissors in 2000. It was called the Millennium, the Keisho Millennium. And I think I paid £750 for them. And now I think they cost £1,000, something like that. But I had those scissors, and I've still got them for 15 years, using them, and I'm just about to send them back to Keisho to be sharpened. It's about quality. It's about quality. The better quality tools you use, the better quality work you can do, without a doubt. Don't buy cheap tools, wasting your money, because you'll keep buying them and buying them. Buy something good. Never buy cheap scissors, always buy good scissors. Cheap is not the best way often, because it's not cheap in the long run. I did a lot of shows back in the 60s. I did a big show in London once, and I was demonstrating. No, it wasn't competition, it was virtually demonstrating. And I did a flat top with scissors and razor. And Vidal Sassoon stood and watched me for an hour and a half, I should think, doing different cuts and bits and bobs. And he came up to me afterwards and he said the method I used was fantastic. And he asked me if I was interested in teaching his staff how to do that. I went, yeah, why not?
that's a big accolade and achievement.
But yeah, and he was a great man. Great man. I just still love the buzz of being in the shop, the banter with the customers, and being able to do what I used to do 50 odd years ago, but do it a damn sight easier.